Hey everyone, just want to stop by real quick before the podcast starts and say you should like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to follow me on all my social medias at John D. Clouser. It's literally the same name as the name that you subscribe to on this YouTube channel. So enjoy this clip, and I'll see you guys on the other side. It's so loud. This microphone's so crisp tonight.
You can say it for real. Oh, shit.
Welcome to The John Show with your host, John Doogie Clouser.
All right. What's going on, everyone? How are you? We are here on a new episode of the Juan Solo Show with your host, me, Juan D. Clouser, John D. Clouser, whichever one works best for you. We are here on episode 138. It's just every time. I remember being at work today, and I'm like, what episode do you have to shoot tonight, John? What episode was it? What is it? And it's like, oh, it's like 130 something. Like, hold on, wait, no, it's like 138. I was like, holy shit. That's a lot. It's interesting. Like now, like these points, like I used to write down like a bunch of different things all the time. Now I'm kind of almost like, well, I have a lot of stuff that I Google. I have weird situations. I can write down, occasional things that remind me of something. And then I guess I can talk about that. It's like, but really, it's like, whatever. It's like, we'll just kind of figure this out. And I probably shouldn't. Recently, I've been thinking, I'm like, John, you should probably, you have a bunch of videos that you have, and you have a bunch of weird articles that you read. And oh god, I was reading a really interesting one about like all these time travel stories that have like some sort of ability that they could be true. Oh god, it was weird. I watched some of the weirdest shit, and I'm like, maybe you should like start sprinkling that into your 30 minutes. It'll just be so much easier. At least it'll give you a little bit more of a concrete foundation. Because right now it's really basically a podcast where you just go and you just ramble, and I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, how many times do you need? How many episodes until you need to stop doing that, and then you can like kind of have some evolution in your show. But yeah, it's like, but because like if you spend time and effort on something, you should try to put more time and effort into it. But I do feel that will be able to happen. I guess some good news occurred. Probably be. I don't know. Should I be saying this? I don't know, because it's still like really early on. I guess I just shot a short film. That was one thing. That was pretty cool. It's mostly I call it a short film. It's more of a trailer. I don't know. That's usually I'm just kind of like, I'm like, yeah, I shot something, but it's not like I shot anything of equivalent of importance. It was just something. It was just a practice thing. It was just like I need to shoot something to, because I've had some gigs where recently that I've done stuff for other people. I haven't done anything for myself and for my own art. And there's this feeling when I don't do that for a long time that I feel like I'm in a complete pile of shit. It's weird. It's an awful feeling. It's an awful thing to have. It's really weird. I don't need to even have it. Therapists have told me that there's no need for me to do this to myself. The reason why I'm doing this is just simply, it's a self-flogging, because, like being abandoned. But it's just, you do it because, I don't know. I feel like there's a good, healthy amount of self-shame and self-flogging you should be doing to yourself. And that's how you succeed and grow as a human, I feel. That's just my opinion. I low-key wish I would have listened to that voice when I was quite younger, because I had this mindset when I was young. It's just like, I was just so fucking... My mindset was also, though, when I was that age, that, like, I don't need to do anything. It's like my parents... So, I got adopted, right? And he always knew that, like, that was such a blessing for me to get that done, for have that happen, because it's just that alone. Like, think about it. It's people from America, United States, like, go to Honduras. Just the fact that they do that alone, and the fact that I was even born, the fact that they were born, the fact that they grew up and had situations that occurred that made them want to adopt a kid, and then they come to Honduras. They go to the orphanage that I happen to be at. The people at the orphanage was like, well, we have this kid, and it's like, you want to see him? And I'm sure it wasn't the best candidate. I couldn't have been the best candidate. There's no way. Isn't that so weird that's how I look at it? It's like, I'm like, oh yeah, it was like a it was a weird sort of like, America's best talent, or Honduras best talent, Honduras best talent, yeah, something like that. It's just, you just do that. You just because you don't do that. It's just it is kind of weird now that I'm like explaining it and talking about it like this way. How it probably was like they just met a bunch of kids, and like when you go to the puppy store and you get a puppy. Oh God. See where this comes from? Like, it's like, see now? Do you understand where now I'm an artist? Like, do you understand why I'm trying to become an artist? Huh? Isn't that funny? Like, we just all had like a really real self reflection of who I am as a human. No, so there we go. Sorry, I apologize. That was so fucking gross. But so growing up, crazy, hard from birth to 7, roughly, before I got adopted. Crazy, hard life, different, weird, hard life. Kind of made me. It's so funny when my parents adopted me, which is so weird why they even did this. Like, they're like, you were just so you would just look off, and you just for long periods of time, you just look, and we'd be like, hey, and like we kind of like push you, and kind of like just kind of nudge you a little bit, and you would just kind of like move over, and then just kind of move back, and just like, dude, everything was so fucking crazy. When I first come to the States, because I didn't understand anything, but eventually, when I started understanding things, I always had the sense of like having a large sense of, I guess I don't know what you'd call it, like survivor guilt. There's this feeling that you have. I honestly can only speak for myself as someone being adopted, and it's so funny. Like, there's adopted, and like you're someone born in America and you got adopted just by some other family, and I'm like, okay, that's like Walmart version of being adopted. Like, I'm like the the Rolls Royce. I'm like the top knot version of being adopted. I was from a third world country, came here, didn't speak English. Kids, pretty wealthy family adopted me. Kind of cliche story. It's like, I have No, you didn't have to go through changing languages. You didn't have to go through different cultures. You didn't have to do all that. No. You were born in Wisconsin, and now you move to Des Moines, Iowa, with that nice family and that farm. No, not the same. We don't have the same sort of adoption. I feel like yours is not as traumatic as mine was. Just not as traumatic. Now, should not think like that, but I do. It's hilarious. It's like okay. But I can only speak for myself as being someone adopted, and it's just such a fucking. I always knew. I was always appreciative because it was such a weird thing that had to have happened. It's still weird happened. Don't know why. How weird? Why? Huh? How? Kind of gives me this weird sense of like, I'm like, like maybe I'm supposed to be doing something crazy cool, because like, why would like the universe like have me come all the way up from Honduras to be in America? Like, oh, it's like, maybe because it's just, this is what happened. Maybe that's it. Maybe that was your going to Hollywood, which is still pretty awesome. Like, that's the reason why I'm like, even if I fucking fail, I'm like, I'm playing with house money. This is all house fucking money. But so, Graham, I always had that mindset, like, you gotta work. But I was always like, well, I don't need to start doing anything crazy until I get to college, and I need to work hard in college, and then work hard once I graduate from college, because my parents were not going to support me anymore. That was the whole thing. And so I was like, yeah, like, it's not going to be hard. So like in high school, I totally just fucked off because of that. I had that mindset of like I don't need to do anything because my parents were like, your job should be going to school and playing sports. And I'm like, all right, well, that's my job. Okay. So I didn't have to actually get a real job, which is crazy, which I'll never, that's the one thing I won't do. And I'm not, because you have to have self-discipline and have to have a work ethic on your own. Like you can have people, push you and like yell at you or tell you how you should have a work ethic, but unless you do it yourself, it doesn't matter. So like I don't blame my parents at all for like being like, hey, no, you don't have to have a job. Like, no, like that didn't hurt me. What hurt me was the fact that I took took advantage of it instead of using it as a tool. And that's what happens when you get older. You get older, you think things are like, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that. So like, let's go the opposite way and you can get more done. So now I'm like, I'm a fucking workhorse. Just because like I just feel like because I always knew that I didn't have to really work fucking hard until I got out of college, and that's fucking stupid. I should never thought of. I should never thought like that, and should never thought like that. And so now it's just like boof, work, and but yeah. So that's where this whole film, to tie it all back together. That's where this whole like film thing is like. I just got to make something. It's just like basically how I looked at it. It was like get people, have them do things, take shots of different things, put sound underneath it, edit together, be done. And it's something. And it's like it could be like a fake trailer. It could be just like a short. It could be whatever. It could be something. But the thing is like, no matter even if it's like nothing, but I did it. That's the thing is I lit it. I had actors, I directed them, I did the whole process in which it was. Because sometimes a project's not meant to be shown. Sometimes a project's not meant to win shit. Sometimes a project is made just so you get it gets an idea out there, flushes something out. And that's the thing I just don't and there is something probably wrong with the fact that how I think, in the sense of like, like you probably don't have to make everything all the time. But my mindset is like, I should make a short story every month. I should do a podcast every week. I should make I need to now, because I did it. I should be making a short film of my own, or some sort of trailer, or some sort of like shooting of things. Like it could be just me chopping up, vegetables and fruits and like making a salad. And just shooting it different ways. It's something. You got to be doing something and like making sound. Like you have to just be doing it, or like what's the fucking point? And it's like this is like the continuous like anger of me. I think this is what angers me the most. Is just like it's not that like I work really hard and like I'm not being rewarded. I'm rewarded when I make something like tonight after I get done for you. You'll see this podcast and you're like whatever. You might have come out by now. You might be watching right now and. You'll be like, oh, he shoots, he fucking films like that. Like, well, for me, like, it's like, well, I did something. I did some filmmaking. I did something more than what a lot of people do. A lot of people wish they were doing something, or they wish they were doing it, but they're not. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to just do it. And it is where it lands. It lands where it lands. And that, probably the weirdest way of thinking. It's probably a really weird way of thinking, but that's just how it is. That's how I think. And I'm like, just got to make stuff. If you want to do this, you just make stuff. There's no, well, this or that. It's like, no, you just kind of have to just do it. Or, it's like, oh, well, no, it's like sometimes it's about like, the interaction with people. Like, no, the interaction with people will happen when you make stuff. Because if it's good, then they'll interact with you. If it's not good, then they just won't say anything. And then you just move on and you make something else. Or, and you know what the greatest thing? It's even awesome if they don't interact with you, because then you can just say a bunch of shit, get all the bad shit out of the way before you do have a large group of people looking at what you do, and then you say something really fucking stupid. So, think about it. TED Talk. Woof. That's 15-minute mark. All right. Entering second act. So funny. I guess talk about second act. I just I watched Isle of the Dogs. I don't know why I've not seen this movie sooner. I remember watching the trailer. I remember being like, oh yeah, I really wanted to check that out. It's a Wes Anderson film. And if you don't know, Wes Anderson is an amazing filmmaker. I would say he's on my Mount Rushmore. No pun intended, because I think he made a movie called Rushmore. I think he made a movie called Rushmore. I think that was his first film. Rushmore. Who directed that? Yes, I was right. Wes Anderson. The budget was $10 million. He has like the same. What's so awesome about him? He has like the same people in all of his movies, and you just do not care. It's a lot. It's awesome because he's like, it's a Wes Anderson film, so it's gonna have this person, this, and this, and it's gonna be a good movie. But The Isle of the Dog, was such a great movie. Talking about second act because it broke it up into 1, 2, and 3. The acts, and it's such a great little movie. It's about this little Japanese boy. If you're not familiar with it, this little Japanese boy who his mother and his father pass away in a train crash, and his uncle takes over part of Japan, became the mayor, and his first thing he wants is he wants to get rid of all the dogs. So that's where the kidness of it, because it's a stop motion film and it's kind of kiddish. You think it's gonna be kind of a kid movie. It's very adult subject matter. It's a very adult subject matter, but so the whole story is just about this boy who goes to this island where they exiled all the dogs in the city, and he befriends these other dogs, and things like that, and their whole thing is just trying to find the boy's dog, because the reason why they're we should help him because he's the only human to come and try to find the dog, because dogs are so loyal. And so to them, they're well, why isn't our owners coming to find us or something like that, But it's a great little fucking film. But what I love about Wes Anderson, even his live action movies, it's like if a 12-year-old boy were to get a camera and they're okay, go make a movie, he has that sense of quirkiness, and I just love it because it's oh man, it's nowhere how I would think at all. I'm very rigid, and I'm very boom, 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 shot. Everything has a meaning. Granted, I'm not saying that his films aren't like that, because everything has a meaning. As a director, you always make sure everything in your shot has a meaning, because you should be able, because if someone asks, at least in my mindset is if someone asks me oh, why did you put this in your shot? Well, it's because it's a metaphor, or it's has to deal with foreshadowing what the last scene is, because you see the same thing up on the shelf, and so that connects the two parts of the story. But it's just it's we're two different styles, because I'm just very more, if you can't tell, this shot well lit. Not that his films aren't, but it's just, that's how it is. This, how I light this is how most of my films are. It is this style of filmmaking. It's I like to put you into a world where everything's a little bit brighter. Everything is a little bit cleaner. And there's a little bit sense of fantasy in the you are the prettiest guy, or you're the prettiest girl, and the person that you're in love with actually loves you too, even though you might break up at the very end of the story. You are in love, and you're feeling this, or you're in this world of learning, or you're you're in the rainforest of Honduras with your brother, going and visiting your mom's grave. It's those kind of things. I'm putting you there, and that's the whole thing. I just want to make it brighter a little bit. So that's the thing. All my videos or all my films, the colors are just a little bit brighter than normal, and everything's a little bit cleaner. So I always want to use nice prime lenses. So there's a difference between zoom lenses and there's prime lenses. So prime lenses are very bright. It's one, so it's a 50 millimeter lens, and it's just a 50 millimeter lens. That's it. So the camera has to move and adjust to the length of the glass. And so with doing that, that means you have to have everything lit well. I almost like to overlight my stage, and it's just because I want you to feel different. Even as an actor, I want you to feel different on set than you do in real life. Like, because this is not that it's not real, but what we're doing is crazy. Like, we're telling a story. We're making a horror film. So even if it's a dark scene, like, the colors that are going to be in the shots are way brighter than normal. There's a red, but there's even a red. And you just a little bit redder. And just because, or a little bit more purples, or a little bit more blues, and a little more greens, and a little more oranges. Like, everything's just amped up a little bit more because it's a fantasy. I want you to feel like it is life plus. That's the thing. That's my feel for you. That's how I want you to feel. And so I just, and so, like, I don't know. I think also too, because I always want you to feel like that, because that's the style of, like, filmmaking I grew up like liking a lot. And especially, right, it's really funny because I grew up like watching a lot of horror films, and like I'm slowly going back into that now because I have the abilities to make these films, that I'm like, fuck it, I'll just make a bunch of horror films, because that's really what I grew up watching, was that, because I'm like, oh, like, this is okay. So you know what I did? My parents had Blockbuster. We had Blockbuster. I had Blockbuster and had an allowance. And so with my allowance, I just saved it all for Friday. So it would be usually, Friday or Saturday during football season, and then Friday during the regular year. All my friends would come over. They'd be like fucking like, it was almost like a huge thing. So there'd be like maybe like 10, 15, sometimes 20 kids over at my place. And what I would do, I would go to Blockbuster. I'd get 10 movies. And I'd get like 2 movies that were out, that just came out, new releases, got those, right? Then I went to every aisle, and I'm like, oh, that's a cool thing. I didn't read anything about the back of it. I'm like, if it has a cool title, and if it has a cool thumbnail, equivalent of like, has a cool cover, equivalent to now, cool title, cool thumbnail, YouTube. So I'm getting, if you can't tell, I'm like getting fucking amped about this. But, so that's what I would do. And so then I would rent, 2 releases, and then the last 8 would be, movies that maybe my friends would watch, people would want to watch. Most likely they're going to watch the movie that just got released. And then I would have like a couple movies that I would want to watch. And those movies would always like these be awful. Like, what was one of them? One of them was like Black Tunnel, which was just I'm like, Black Tunnel, what the hell is that about? And it just had Black Tunnel, and had like this tunnel and this guy with this mask on as the cover of the thing. I'm like, okay. And it being a really cool horror film. It had a lot of tits and ass, and it was really, now I watched it lately. I watch it all the time just because it's nostalgia, but it's fucking dog shit. But but that's what I would do. I would just like, and I just engulfed myself in movies. I'm like, oh, this is for sure. And like, I tell people all the time, if it wasn't for, like, one of the greatest things about DVDs was that it had the director's commentary. Like, nothing was cooler than that. It was like podcasting. It really was. It was podcasting for filmmaking way back in the day. And you learned so much things. I learned so much by just listening to that stuff. And then when I was able to finally get like, cameras, and when I did stuff, like I felt like I was steps like further than other people. Even when I went to film school, I felt like I was always kind of a little steps above, a step not above, but further along on this process, because I had just always been around it. Because I've always been like, I submerged myself into it, because I feel like that's what you had to do to be good at it. You had to always be watching. You always had to know films. You always had to know who did this, who did that, like lighting, sound, like costuming, all that stuff. I just feel like you had to, because like I would listen to it on these like the director's commentary. So I'd watch the movie, and then I'd watch the movie again with the director's commentary, with the director talking about it. And it was a podcast, and it'd be scene by scene. And then sometimes it would ramble off and then come back. And it's just, it was the coolest fucking thing in the world. But yeah, somehow I feel like they need to bring that back in some way. That's actually kind of interesting, because I wonder if people would want to watch that. I wonder if people would want to watch that now. Because with all the technology and everything that we have, because it's almost like, would people want that, or would they want to keep it how it is, and they just go to like chat rooms and they talk about it and they break it down. They have other people like somebody like me who's just a guy who right now just makes movies and writes and all this stuff. Like he tells, I write like a 8,000 word like breakdown of the story, and because of that, like people start getting like an idea of the book. Like, why would you not want to hear it from the horse's mouth, kind of thing? Doesn't make any. Like, it seems like it'd be a cool thing to have, but it is what it is. But yeah, so yeah, I have that, and then I'm gonna be so glad when this month is over, just because I have this story I'm working on right now that I'm just like it was. It's just because I'm in like this weird point where I'm editing, and I think everything's awful. And I'm like, what is this story? What am I telling? What am I trying to say? That's always the thing. Like, you might not see it as someone who watches it, but I want to be able to be like, oh yeah, this is what's pushing the story. This is why I wrote this story, was because of this is what I'm trying to say. This is the root of what I'm trying to say for the story. And so I'm in that part, and I felt like I got it yesterday when I was editing and I was writing a little bit, because I'm almost at because I have like, it's a 3,000 word limit. I'm at 2,965. So I have a little bit more space, but like, I think I'm basically, John, this is where it's going to be at, because I want to get to 3,000 words. Whatever the limit is, I want to try to get it there, and then I'll just start cutting down, because then you flushed out all the ideas and all the thoughts. This is how my logic goes, and then after that, then you can just start chipping and chopping, adding. Take maybe like, I have a whole paragraph. It's almost like 300 words. I must just delete all of it and just never use it, or like just take it out. So it's things like that. It's just God. But this gives me so much joy. This is my it's so funny because like I say it's a hobby, but it's like also like this career too, because I do get paid to do these things. Not this, but my short films and all the other stuff. And so I'm just like, oh man, it's just like, you gotta just make stuff. And that's the biggest thing I just keep going back to. You just gotta make things over and over again. Because like, I think about if I didn't make things, where would I be at as a filmmaker if I never started doing the podcast? If I never started doing the solo podcast? I think about that, and I'm like, oh God, I'd be so much further behind, and I wouldn't have the ability, like, because what makes it so awesome is like, I just all these lights like this, boom, 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 and I set it up, and when I get on stage, boom, boom, I set like things up, and I can move this, move that. I just have I have a better idea of how it's going to look in the lens, how the shots are going to look, how everything's going to be, because I'm always submerging myself. I'm always dipping my pen in that ink, and I'm always writing, and I'm always like, metaphorical writing, and just I'm always doing stuff, and I'm like, I just don't understand, like, you want to do this, so then why would you not want to get better at it? Even like this podcast might be dog shit to people, but I'm trying to get better. It's just that's the thing. You should always just try to get better. And that's why I feel like there's always all these podcasts, not all these, but my podcast ends. And I as much as I hate that stuff, but you know what? Some real shit. I guess what was it? I guess I have a minute left, so I really don't have much. But I guess I should probably just. Yeah, I got about a minute left, guys. I gotta stop real quick. So if you've gotten this far, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Yeah, get a hobby. It'll make you appreciate everything a little bit more. All right, this is end Act 3 pretty much, guys. All right, well, I will see you guys on the next episode. I almost broke this chair even more. All right, bye. Take it easy.